Welcome to PSB Turnkey Solutions and the next in a series of educational workshops. With me today is Arthur Germain, Principal and Chief Brand Teller at Brandtelling, a brand storytelling agency located in East Northport, New York. Arthur just released a new book called The Art of Brandtelling, Brand Storytelling for Business Success. It provides a series of brand storytelling services to increase awareness and relevance for brands, products, and services. I just finished reading the book, and I can promise you there is a ton of wisdom in there, and it's worth the read. So welcome, Arthur.
Thanks very much, Jamie. Appreciate it. Good to be here with you today.
It's great to have you. I have lots of questions for you, so if I can jump right in.
Yeah,
I always
please.
love this. I always love this one. I know you and I have done this before. What is brand telling?
So brand telling for me, it's two things. One, it's the name of the agency. I kind of rebranded from an older agency name in 2021. But for me, brand telling or brand storytelling is really a way to create, capture, and curate the stories about your business, your products, your services, your customers that really make sense and are relevant and interesting. And then to share them in a way that focuses on the benefits and the value that you provide the customers. I think that too often we get into marketing that's all me, me, me. And when what I've looked at with the brand storytelling is the why you, why now, and what's relevant to me. And I think that is, that's what I consider brand storytelling and brand telling.
I, I've always was taught that in a in a sales pitch is rather than tell them I can do this for you, if you use an example, like I had a customer who had a similar situation and this is what we were able to do for them. That is a softer yet more effective way of conveying a message. That's brand telling, that's a story.
Yeah, I think so. In sales, our friends over at Sandler will tell you that, uh, you're better off asking, why do you ask that, rather than pushing ahead with, yes, I can do that, and going down a path where the customer might say, oh, because that wasn't what I was looking for. And I think with brand storytelling, if I can tell a story, if I can give an example, and I'll say, for example, Jamie, I have a client where I did X, Y, and Z. Is that something like what you're talking about? That helps us to have a conversation. It helps us to look at a group that I've helped, and it also lets me do the thing that I really think is important. I'm making the customer the hero in my story. I'm not the hero. I'm the guide. I'm there. I'm there in the passenger seat, sitting with the customer and helping them achieve a goal. In this case, helping them achieve a goal of strengthening their brand. And by doing that, by telling a story about customers or a single customer, I can convey that a lot better than, if I said, well, we have a really robust, flexible, and easy to use, smarter, better, faster, harder solution. Those things just don't make sense to people. They just become so many words that, it's a word salad that I'm giving somebody, rather than, here's an example of a company that I helped, and maybe you can see in that example yourself.
Love it. I love it. I smarter, faster, bigger, better than what?
Right.
Is brand telling something new, or is this something you've been doing for a while?
Yeah, brand telling itself isn't new. We've been telling stories, since we could scratch on caves, right? We, we're
I
kind of
saw that in the
hardwired.
book.
Yeah, we're hardwired for it. The idea that we're going to tell a story. I always say my favorite 6 words are, "Let me tell you a story." People's shoulders relax, they go back. They're like, "I'm going to get a story." It's a lot better than saying, "Hey, let me sell you something," where people are like, "Oh, wait, I don't want to hear that." Um, and but the idea of brand telling is something that I came up with in 2007. I had an opportunity to listen to Seth Godin, who was a marketing guru. He was talking about his own book and was giving a presentation in Manhattan. I went in to see him, and I got a copy of his book. He's signing the book, and he says, "Hey, Arthur, what do you do?" And at that time, I was running what was a PR agency. So I said, "I have a technology PR agency." And Seth kind of cocks his head to the side and goes, "So how's that different?" And I was kind of stuck for an answer, Jamie. I was like, how's that different? I don't know. And here I am looking stupid in front of my, in front of the guy who I read all of his books. And he's nice. He slides a business card across to me and he says, when you have an idea, why don't you just let me know? And I went back to my team and we had this discussion saying, what do we do that's different? How are we unique? How are we different? And we decided, we're doing the same kind of things we did as when we were journalists, where we're telling a story. We are trying to find out why now, why this, why is this the important story, and why is it relevant for our audience. Only we're doing this now for clients rather than for our readers in an article. And that's where we said, well, we're telling a story, we're brand storytelling. And then, being the marketer I am, I combined that, made it a whole word and said, we're brand telling. And so I've actually had this as a registered trademark for years. And we used it for years as the approach that we use. We'd say, well, we use a brand telling approach. And then in 2021, I rebranded the agency and used the brand telling moniker as the name for the agency. For those who knew us, that was no different. They're like, oh, I was waiting for you to do that. So it made sense. And then for the book, The Art of Brandtelling is kind of where I'm giving the tips, the tricks, the techniques that I use in doing that. And I work to help people do that through the book.
You talk about names, and obviously you practice what you preach, because changing your name to brand telling is telling what your brand is. And you use an example in the book of, I think it was an electrical business.
Mm.
And you talked about how if it was John Smith Company, it didn't explain who they were. Do you want to take
Yeah.
it from there and lead through that story for a second?
Yeah, John Smith, or what did I use? I think I used like a Kazoni as a name. And I said, if you said that we're Kazoni and Co., I'm unclear what you do. I get that it's probably somebody's last name, but I don't know what you do. If I say Kazoni and Co. Electricians, I've got a little bit more of an understanding. If I said Kazoni and Co. Electrical contractors, I get an idea that you're a larger company. You're not just electricians, you're a larger company. So sometimes, giving a name that gives a little bit of a clue to what you do is something that's helpful. I think, though, that what you really have to do is you start with, who do I serve and what do I provide for them? What do I do that's different for them and that is unique? And you start with a category for yourself. So Kazoni and Co. might say, our category is electrical engineering for school districts. So you could have been electrical engineering for anything, but the electrical engineers for school districts, school district electrical engineering is is kind of a category that they might start with. Then they come with the brand name and they start to build from there. I think there's a section where I went in on naming, and there are lots of ways to name a company, and lots of ways to pour money into naming a company. It's hard for anybody who's 20 years old or younger today to understand that Amazon is a name of a river somewhere. You say Amazon to them, there's only one Amazon for them, and it's online. But Jeff Bezos had to really push when he started Amazon in whatever 95. He really had to make that mean something. It was going to be started out as like kind of the idea of the Amazon was a river of books, a river of content. Now it's a river of anything you need to get online, is there. And I think, so, coming up with a name that is meaningful to your audience and giving them a clue about what you do, whether it's through the name, whether it's through the tagline that you use, that's really what becomes important. And so, I think about the category, I think about the brand name, and I think about the tagline. And then all the real practical things. Can I actually get a domain name for that? Does anyone else use that name in a similar vein here, in the state or in the country, so that I can actually own it. That's always a concern. So there's lots of little practical concerns. It's great to say, I have a really great idea for a name for a company. We're gonna show movies and we're gonna do it online. I want to call it Netflix. No, I'm sorry, you can't do that. So you might have a great idea. Somebody's got that, and somebody's had it for a while now. So that's the so there's lots of little concerns to go through as you're doing naming.
So okay, let's talk about this. That was on my list of questions, and
Sure.
you talked about how names come about, and you used Amazon as an example of he had a reason why he called it that. Again, the river of
Right.
books that he was going to be selling, but it morphed into the other way around. As you say, it's no one thinks of it from the standpoint of the Amazon River, but rather Amazon now means like in everything, it's
Right.
just, and everybody's response is, I go to Amazon. So he actually changed the definition of that word.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
on,
Absolutely.
on on the other hand, you use the example of Staples,
Yeah.
and and I was thinking about that, and I was, it's office. I get it, office supplies, and I'm thinking Staples. Well, Staples are just one piece of the equation. But then I said, no, it's the staples of which is all the essentials that you
Right.
need. So again, it makes a sense. We should go to Staples. We should go to Office Depot or whatever. And then I love the other one. You had people's names, and you talked about Dwayne Johnson
Yeah.
as the Rock.
Dwayne the Rock
Uh,
Johnson, right?
and you said if he was Dwayne the Pebbles Johnson, it wouldn't convey the same message. And so you really talk about how your name or a name is important to conveying the message. Now, in some cases, the the message became stronger and created the name. If I say it back,
Hmm.
but the name created the message, whereas other places is the message created the name. So Staples, the message created the name. Amazon, it was the other way. So I think that's great. So then I have to ask:
Sure.
is PSP Turnkey Solutions a good name?
So I think, there's, you're using the initials. Remember, IBM started as International Business Machines, and they were that for a very long time before they just moved to the initials. I think professional solutions provider says exactly what it is. Um, it's a very plain name stated very, very plainly. It will take a while for people to understand. Oh, that's PSP. So you're probably best off when you're using it to spell it out the first reference with PSP in parentheses and then use PSP elsewhere when you're talking, because you're trying to establish kind of a nickname or something for people. But I think I think it's a strong name in that you're saying these are professional solutions, and that you are representing a group of providers. You say that very cleanly. Our former company name was Communication Strategy Group, and that was a name that people kind of got, okay, had something to do with communication, could be public relations, could be internal comms. There was strategy, and that was good. And a group, okay, so it's not just you, there's a group of people. Brand telling's a little bit different. And it's that combined name. And I often have to say to people, we provide brand strategy and storytelling for technology firms. And, I have to say that. I use a tagline that I say story first, because I want people to know that's what we believe, that's how you should lead what you're doing, story first. But it's a challenge for lots of companies. Think about professional services. I once met a lawyer at a party, and I said to him, what do you do? And he says, I'm a lawyer. I said, oh, okay, but what do you do? And he goes, oh, well, I do, business law. And I said, right, but what do you do? And he said, after a little bit of a discussion, he said, I work with these mom and pop shops that are really, they're family owned, family operated. They may be into a second, maybe a third generation. I help them understand the changes that are going on in their business, how they help to by understanding the law, and by understanding what they can do, how they can pass that generational wealth to a next generation. And about that point, he stops. He goes, "Wow, I provide like, you know, this family business law. I'm like, yeah, that's what you do, right? It's different from just saying I'm a lawyer. That was just too much of a toss off. You know, lots of lawyers can say I'm a lawyer, but this guy was doing something really different and unique. And I think that's the challenge for people, is to sit down, grab the pen and paper and write it down. What exactly do we do? Who exactly do we serve? And how do they see us? What's the point of view I'm using? What's the point of view that they see us through?
I want to turn over all the cards for a second, as they say, and give the answer. And I see is it's worth talking to Arthur, because as I did, you ask him a question, you can ask about yourself, and he'll give you an answer. So as he did, as he explained, PSP, you did that for me a few months back, and I forget what exactly it was, but it was brilliant, and I've used it ever since. If only I
I'll
can.
accept that. I was brilliant. That's good. I like that. Thanks.
It was, and it will have to go back one day and figure out what it was. But I just remember asking you a question and going, "What about me?" And within 30 seconds, you had concisely and precisely been able to explain it to me. But of course, it's one of the many things you've helped me with, and I can't remember. But as I said to you, we talk about your book is very practical. It's not about theory, it's about applying that. And so, as I said to you earlier in our conversation before we started, there was a piece in here that you talked about that I have taken and I've passed along to a partner of mine, because I thought it was so relevant and so valuable to them. And I guess the message I'm trying to say to people out there is, buy the book, because I promise you, reading it will give you answers to questions that you probably didn't even know to ask, or it will give you insight into the questions that you are asking. So
I
staying
appreciate that. The art of brand telling, and you can find it at theartofbrandtelling.com, and you can get it on Amazon as you can get the book, or you can download the ebook from my website. But what you were just talking about, the idea of making it practical, um, my editor Mark Kinley, who's a longtime friend and editor, said, as I was going through the process of putting the book together and kind of assembling it, we were moving chapters around and adding things to it. He said, you really do want to give people something practical to do at the end of each chapter. And so that's what I've done inside. I created these things that are considerations, where I ask 3 questions, and I just tell you, go grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, and write down your responses to these 3 things. If you do that consistently through the book, it will help you to develop your brand, your point of view, or at least it will spark some thoughts and conversations for you and your team. And I really wanted to make it practical. It's a short book. It's 111 pages, 12 chapters, it's broken into 3 sections. And the point being that I wanted people to be able to have something useful. It's kind of a way of giving back. I can't work with everybody. I may not be, they may not be at the budget for what we do, but certainly the book is something affordable, and any business owner can go through it. And I'm hoping that they find it as useful, as you were just saying, to be able to then take away and say, wow, that was good. I can consider the name that I'm putting out there. I can consider what is my category. Maybe I should rethink my tagline. And what do I mean about the stories? I talk about, earlier on I said about brand telling. It's the idea is that you create certain stories. You're going to create the stories that are about you and about the products that you have. How did you found the company? All of those kind of things are things you're going to create. Then you're going to capture stories. How do I work with customers? I would say I don't like case studies, but I love customer success stories, right? So what are the customer success stories? What have I done? In what way have I guided or helped a company to do the thing that my business does with them? And then I need to curate stories, and that's the hardest part. You throw some away, you say, yeah, that story's kind of small and nobody's going to get it. It's great internally, but nobody understands it. And when you curate the stories, you also organize them. Some of your stories might be, if you're a growing company, you're onboarding employees, you want them to hear those stories, because you want to ingrain it. I call it story leadership, building story leadership instead of thought leadership, because it may have been your thought, you were the thought leader, but you want to begin to ingrain that thought leadership with all of your employees. So that's, you're building story leadership for them, the stories that you tell and that they will then share on, based around the company. And so I talk about it, and you're building a brand storybook for your company, and it's going to contain all of these stories. And I mean that literally. You're going to write down these stories. It can be just a few notes, but how did you help a company? You were just mentioning before, PSP. Well, how did PSP help a company lower their electricity costs? How did you help a company that was looking perhaps to purchase some new land or purchase a new building? What are the stories? It's easy to say we help companies buy a new building. Okay. How about, we helped a manufacturer that was proposing a new line and really needed to put, in a kind of a robotic line into the facility. They couldn't retrofit it in the current facility, but they were going to move into a new facility. We helped them find the right facility. We helped them build it out and retrofit it with the PSP members. That's a much better story. I'm going to hang on every word of that one, because that sounds more like what I want to hear and what I need to know, rather than we help them buy real estate, that. And that's, but that's often the thing we hear, right? We often talk to somebody and they forget that the power of the story. I have to say, not realtors are really great at telling the power of the story. They're like, can you imagine yourself in this home, or could you imagine your business in this area? And they're really terrific at painting that picture of what it's going to be. I just wish, like, all the companies that I work with were as good as the realtors at painting that picture. That's what they need to be able to do.
Isn't that the difference between features and benefits?
Right.
What does it mean to you as a company, as opposed to the benefits, the features? I never remember which is which, but which,
Yeah. So
what do we do, and what does it mean to you?
Right. Think about with the real estate, a feature is that you say, there's 40 windows. That's a feature. A benefit is that it is a bright space, and that, it's a bright space, and you almost don't require lighting except on a cloudy or a day or in the evening, because there's always natural light filtering into the room. That's all, that's all benefit. The number of windows and how easy they are to clean, those might be features.
If you're selling features, you're not selling benefits. You're not telling them what it means to them. You're telling them what it physically has. All right. Can I throw a question about politics to you? And it's a sensitive topic these days.
Sure.
But I watched the debates the other night, and talk about likability, and really that's about brand. The politicians in a debate, it's about brand, and it's about voice. And you talk about voice. I want to talk about that a little bit more. But in the world of politics, it's, do you like them or don't like them?
Right.
And it's,
I think
it comes out with a very specific measurement at the end of the day in a poll. Tells you
It's
if
the
they
same
like them
with
or not.
business, right? We often say that people purchase from those that they know, like, and trust, right? So you know them, you've learned about them, like them in that you believe them, you think that they are being helpful with you, and then you trust them because they've proven themselves to be a man or woman of their word. So yeah, when you mentioned the debates, I thought, it was a little chaotic, people yelling at one another. The one moment that really stood out to me, that I really had a respect for, was when the moderator said, "Hey, who are you gonna cast off the island? Write down the name and cast them off the island." And every single one of them said, "We're not doing that. We're not playing that game. That's silly." They actually said, "I respect all the people up here. We're all up here for a reason. This is not a game, and we're not going to do that." And that got them the most applause. It was, for me, I thought it was the most unifying moment, and I really respected all of them for taking that stance. It was a silly kind of a throw off, and I think the moderator should have been ashamed of themselves for asking. So I would say that their likability factor went up for me when they refused to do that. The you know we'll have to work on the trust factor, but you trust. It really, it has to do with you know how, how much you walk the walk and talk the talk in your brand. And I think it's important to think about, what do you want your brand to convey. We mentioned that the, the language that you use in your brand, that's really important. um, how friendly is your brand, how conversational is your brand, those kind of things are important, and that goes to the know, like, and trust factor as well.
And you talk about the style.
Hmm.
Uh, I think what you were talking about with when they all said no, they won't do it, is a level of integrity
Yeah, absolutely.
and a level of sincerity, and I was using the politicians as an example because it has an immediate measure, like I say, in the fact that polls and whatnot. But it was like watching each of them and understanding their brand and their message, their brand, and who they are, and the believability. And so that same comes true when you talk about a business.
Right.
And you're talking about, again, we go back to your name, it tells you who you are, and the way you describe it, you give a level of believability to what you do. Um, it's not a false hope. So now going back to the book, you mentioned that you broke it into three sections, not chapters, but just 12 chapters. What are the three sections, and what's the difference between them?
Right. So the first section is the introduction, and that's where I talk about how, why I wrote the book, and what I think a brand is and what is brand storytelling. So I can just kind of set the conditions. The next is what I call brand foundations, and this is where I talk about what you need to do in order to form the basis for your stories. And then finally, I talk about building story leadership, and this is where you can consistently share your brand stories, the way that you want to tell those stories. So each of the chapters that are in each of those sections is about one of those things, either about what is the brand, building those foundations, and then how do we share, how do we strengthen once we built the brand.
You have at the beginning of each chapter a fun cartoon.
Yeah.
Isn't that the ultimate
I
brand storytelling?
I years ago, at least 15 years ago, I had posed this question, can you tell your story and I had done a series of things. Could you tell your story in a video? Could you tell your story in audio? Could you tell your story as a cartoon? And I went looking for a cartoonist, and I found Mark Anderson of Andertoons Cartoons. So it's andertoons.com. And Mark did a fabulous job. And that's the first cartoon in the book. Mark, I explained to him what is brand telling, and this was before I had used it as the name. I had just barely gotten it as a registered trademark, and I explained it to him, and he said, "I have an idea." And I said, "Go ahead, you do your idea." And Mark has two of his characters in front of a large building. At the top of the building, it says Mother Goose Inc., and the characters underneath, the little caption says, "But things really took off when she got into brand telling." So I always loved that, and I thought it was a really great idea and a way to convey it. So I followed Mark for years. I subscribed to he has a cartoon library. I subscribed to it, and so I've used those cartoons with permission, and I use those cartoons throughout the book.
I thought they were great. And again, picture is worth 1,000 words. So you just did
Yeah,
a
so the book is
cartoon.
a lot bigger than you think.
All right. You talk about sticky stories.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So for me, a sticky story is just one that can be remembered and repeated and rewarded, is the phrase that I use. So a sticky story might be the thing that you tell someone that they are going to walk away with and remember about how how you worked with a company or a customer. What was your product or service? You know, that's less important about what was the feeling that you left them with about the work you did with a company. And so, um, you know, you'd have to think about, what are some of my best stories? What are some of the things that I tell customers or prospects or prospective employees that really remain with them, that they know and that they'll share. And often the reason to tell a sticky story is, I may be talking to you first about a service that I'm going to offer, and maybe we're going to work together. But I know that you've got a group that makes up your kind of decision-making group. I want you to be able to go back and say something to that group that they say, yeah, you know, Jamie told us that you did X, Y, and Z, and that you helped another company. And, you know, I want you to be able to be my brand ambassador. And in order to do that, I got to leave you with a sticky story. It doesn't have to be much of one. Even if I've left you with, you really need to talk with Arthur. He really is the brand storytelling guy. He helps companies with their brand strategy. He helps them build a brand storybook. And look, this is what he did for XYZ company. And, you know, we looked at their website, and the changes were really obvious. And everybody comes in the call the next time to say, you know, we took a look at that company you worked with, right? Now they've all been primed, and they've all, you know, listened to the sticky story. And I think that that's, you know, that's what I mean by using that phrase.
It reminds me of my father and movies. My father would say to me, I heard such and such is a really good movie. And then I worked in a family business for many years. And then I'd be at lunch with my brothers, and one of my brothers would say, "Hey, have you seen such and such? It's supposed to be a really great movie." And I go, "Yeah, I've heard that before."
Right.
What we didn't know, and I just use movie as the example, is that my father would tell the three of us, I had two brothers, still
Right.
do. My father would tell the three of us the same story, and then the three of us in separate conversations would then repeat that story. And now we've heard it two, if not three times until we believe it.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about. And
Yeah.
then we'd all go run, then
And
we'd all
that's
have to
a,
go run see the movie.
you know, that's a good example of it. The bad example of it is what we call like the echo chamber, where you know, you've heard some news from one source, and three other people hear it from one source, and all of you talk and say, wow, everybody's talking about this. We're like, well, we all listen to that one source, and so I don't know what to do. But the idea that your dad's able to tell you a story that is was so clear for you that, you know, we really want to see this, and he built the excitement up about it. And then you and your brothers both talking about it, you know, all talking about it, kind of hype the excitement is really great. You know, you carried it through, and that's what I mean about it's being remembered, and it's been repeated, and the reward, because, you know, as you tell a person who hasn't heard about it, you know, yet, the reward is, you know, seeing the excitement on their face, hearing from them. Yeah, you know, that's great. That's exactly what we're looking for. And you know, that's the rewarding part, is that you're going to go off and tell people like that.
And that's the magic of it. So that, you know, you told me this great story, and now I'm in another situation, and this is a great opportunity to use your story as an example.
Hmm.
I now tell this to somebody, they then hear it from somebody else, and now they're believing it, and then it circles back, and now you have a new customer. Or at least that's what
Absolutely.
we hope. So we do that. All right. Well, I'm really enjoying this. I think we've covered all our different bases. We did our politics. We did, and this was a good one for me. Is you call it Brand Voice Checkboard,
Mm.
and you talk about lawyers. You know, different industries should have different voices,
Yeah.
and I know people, you know, people recognize my voice. I have a particular style, let's say, to the way I write or the way I speak, and it's recognizable. Part of it is they all don't use me and pick on me, but it's always for fun. Um, but talk about that for the moment, and that is, what's your right voice? You know, you have this
Chessboard, yeah.
chessboard
So the
to
Brand
give you
Voice
the examples.
Chessboard is kind of a tool that I use when I'm working with companies, and you know, is your voice going to be conversational and casual, or is it going to be corporate and formal? And again, there's no right or wrong here. There just is, you know, what is it that you're going to select. If you are a law firm, perhaps working in a compliance area, maybe you're working in HIPAA, you probably are not going to play the conversational casual game. You're going to lean a little bit more toward corporate and formal because there's really specific language, and that language means something for the industry. So that's a choice. Are you contemporary or traditional? Are you going to use, I've worked with companies where we've had the discussion, do they want to use contractions in, or do they want to spell everything out? It depends really on how traditional and formal that they want their language to be. That goes into, are you fun and friendly or serious? And you could still be somewhat friendly while you're being corporate and formal, and that might be something you said to me earlier about, do you use the first person? Do you say our clients, or do you say when we work with you? So that's a difference between, are you going to be friendly or serious? You're going to be simple and jargon free, or are you going to be heavy in the jargon? If you're working with a company, if your company works with a certain industry where everybody uses the jargon, there's a good chance that you want to use it as well. I often recommend, the first time you say it, like professional solution providers, spell that out and then use the acronym. But that has to do a lot with who you're working with. And I think in all those cases, what we're really talking about is, what does your customer expect from you? What is the point of view that they expect coming to you? And what should they get when they come back? I think it's worth going through the exercise and thinking about it, and just working on some examples, looking at copy. You just joked before, you said your copy tends to be a little bit self-deprecating. You kind of make fun of yourself, and that's fine. That becomes a part of your style to do it that way. My sister-in-law read the book, and she texted me right away to say, oh my God, I hear your voice when I'm reading it. And that's great. That means that I did a good job of capturing my point of view and my voice. And she's known me for years, of course, and so she's heard me talk for a long time, but she knows what I talk about in my business, and so this was familiar to her, the way that I said that.
I have to emphasize that. I too, I heard
Yeah,
your voice in there. Um, and that leads to the level of integrity, sincerity, believability, is, knowing you, reading the book, hearing your voice in it, it all made sense.
right.
And it was easily understandable. So I like that. And I think that leads me to maybe what will be ultimately my last question, and that was point of view.
Hmm.
You talk about that in the very beginning. It was, in fact, it was one of the first things that I wrote down, is point of view. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. I think the thing that differentiates companies very often is the point of view that they hold. Let's say, for example, that you and I worked for a company together. We were business analysts within a financial institution, and we said, I think we could do a better job or a different job. We could break this out. We see something missing for our clients, so we break out and we start a company. What's important, if we're going to be successful, is for us to have a point of view that is completely different from the company that we just left. We decided we could do this, and we could serve clients in a way that our former company didn't. We're not saying that they weren't doing a good job. We're saying they were missing something, left something on the table, and we think that that's something that's important for the customer. So we break out. What is that point of view? What is it that makes that different? I wrote an article once about the idea about, are you looking at something? Are you looking at your brand through a magnifying glass, or through a telescope? And the idea there is, sometimes you need to look really, really close up to see something and look for the differences, and sometimes you want to pull back and see what it looks like. People often talk about the seeing the tree for the forest, and sometimes it's good to see the tree, and sometimes it's better to see the whole forest, and where the tree sits there. So that's the important part about the point of view. And once you understand that, once you have a point of view, it really helps lots of companies want to do content marketing. They're going to write articles for LinkedIn and Facebook. They want to produce videos. If they have a sincere, honest, and something they own point of view, they're going to have a much easier time creating that content, and they'll be much more successful at it as well, because they're coming from their own earned point of view, rather than just kind of jumping on the bandwagon and writing everything that's everybody else is writing. And we've seen plenty of that. We're like, oh, I've read copy like this before, let's move on.
I'm going to have one last question for you. I'm going to stick to
This will
that.
be
But
your third
before,
last. I think that's good.
I'll say self-deprecating. But before that, two things is I love your definition of brand, and that is the promise you make to your audience.
Yeah.
Again, it explains what you're talking about, and I love that. And the other is, as people read the book, I said this to you off camera, is that when I first started to read the book, the first, well, let me rephrase it. When I started to read the book, the first thing I did was pulled out a piece of paper to prepare myself to take notes, because I knew I was going to be asking you questions, and I wanted to make sure I had a list of things that were relevant. And the first thing I read in the book is grab a notebook. So
Yeah.
it's like you read my mind, and I know it. And so I'm going to tell you all that when you get the book, the first thing you need to do is grab your notebook and a pen and get ready to write down these things, because what you're going to do as you go through the book is you're going to say, hey, I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do this. And you're going to write down the things so that you can remember what to do. And so now I'm going to stay with that. I'm going to ask you the last question.
Sure.
And that is, of the 12 chapters in the book, which was your favorite?
Yeah, that's a good question. I tried to be as practical as possible in the book, but I think that the chapter 6, which was 5 steps for telling your own powerful and differentiated brand story, I think that is the one that I'd say is my favorite, because I think it is the most practical. I list out the 5 things. Define your value proposition, determine your target audience, craft your brand message, tell your brand story, and amplify your brand message. Those 5 points that I outline really are the core of what you need to do in building and sharing the brand story. And I think, so I've said to people when they're like, oh, so what's this about? I'm like, read chapter 6, because then you get a little bit, you get a little into, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. And then you can go back and read the rest.
I guess I say that you can read chapter 6 so that you get a gist of it, the value of this, and then you better go back and read the whole thing. And as you said, it's not a long book, but it is a practical book, and it kind of leads you down a path. And I think anybody who reads this will come out better than when they came in. So with that, thank you, Arthur. This was absolutely great. I always learn something new from you. I just have to remember what it was, or write it down, or tell somebody else. But it's always valuable to have a conversation with Arthur. So if any of you would like to have that conversation with him, give me a call or email me. I'll put the information at the end, and I will put you together with Arthur and make sure that you get the same ROI that I did, which is immediate gratification, education, and eventually profitability, because what he's telling you will help grow your business. So Arthur, again, I thank you, and I just have to compliment you on your subway background. It's one of the best.
Mark Richardson, one my videographer and photo specialist, built it for me. I love it. So I said, hey, that's a really great video background for Zoom. So I used it right away. And the book, you can get that at theartofbrandtelling.com.
And I will again post all of that at the end of this. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Arthur. And till the next time, have a great day.
Yes, thanks very much, Jamie.